It is my proud and humble pleasure to introduce author and our next reader, who began his professional software development career at WordPerfect in 1991, where he wrote 8086 assembly language code and helped kill the DOS version of that venerable word processor. And to all of us, thank you. Ironically, he still uses WordPerfect for most of his prose writing, which includes more than 30 works of short fiction. His stories have appeared everywhere from Asimov's to Salon, and have been shortlisted for the Hugo Award, the Nebula Award, and the Theodore Sturgeon Memorial Award. He has appeared around town, this one and New York nowadays, for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Oh wait, I skipped the line again. Town at such popular live lit events as Essay Fiesta, The First Time, and Write Club, at which he won. A past national judge for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, he now serves as a board member for the Chicago Writers Conference, which I just mentioned. He has lived in New York City since June, and yet he still keeps coming to Chicago for this event right here, which is why he will be reluctantly stepping down as a Tuesday Funk co-host at the end of 2013. We'll be announcing his replacement soon, maybe October 1st, for instance. But, in the meantime, please join me in welcoming William Shunn. Oh, no! Oh, dear. Yes.
It's Minority Report come to life.
What? Give me a moment here.
All right, let's give Andrew a moment.
I'm not in the bathroom. Come on.
The sign's there.
Well said.
You get my papers back in order. Thank you so much. Yeah, the poem was not the last you're going to hear from me tonight, or the rest of the year, because I'm very sad to be leaving Tuesday Funk, so I'm going to pop up a couple more times before I leave. By way of introduction, I first read... Tuesday Funk was founded in 2008 by Connor Coyne, and I first read at Tuesday Funk number 12, which was April of 2009. And I read a chapter from the memoir that I was working on, The Accidental Terrorist, and then kept appearing and reading more chapters, which I've continued to do over the years since I've become host. Tonight, though, I'm just going to cut to the chase and read what's essentially a distillation of the whole goddamn book. And this was first read at The First Time in April at Up Comedy Club. And if you were there, my apologies that you're going to hear it again. But one other thing you need to know is that that week, that was the week that two Chechen immigrants detonated some explosive devices in Boston. So that sort of informed the writing of this piece also. This is called How I Became a Terrorist Without Really Trying. They caught up with me in the men's room of a bus station in Great Falls, Montana. Now, the fact that they were after me might lead you to presume that I was running from the law, that the cops or other authorities were hot on my trail, but that's not the case. My felony was still 2 months in the future at that point, though I was on the lam. I was on the lam from the Mormon Church. It was the last week of 1986. I was 19 years old, and I'd spent the past 3 months in the dreary oil town of Brooks, Alberta, Canada, the first posting of my 2-year assignment as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I never wanted to serve a mission, but I grew up in Utah in a devout family, and to not do so would have meant admitting to my parents and my community and my church leaders that I just wasn't that into Mormonism. I had college to finish. I had novels I was burning to write. But I also had shame. So like a good boy, I put in my mission application papers, hoping for a plum assignment like Brazil or Sweden or Japan, Someplace I could at least learn a foreign language and rack up some cool life points. Instead, Canada. And not even the part where they spoke French. Western Canada. For a bright Mormon kid from Utah, this was almost as humiliating an assignment as Idaho. But that's where the gray hairs in Salt Lake City said that God needed me. Missionary life, if you're curious, is horrible. Knocking on doors for 12 hours a day in miserable weather, no television, no movies, no newspapers, no books but the Bible and the Book of Mormon, no dating, no phone calls home. The constant presence of your assigned partner, your so-called companion, with whom you spend every waking moment of every single day, lest one or the other of you should fall into temptation. Oh, and always referring to each other by your title, elder, instead of by your names. After 3 months of this, I'd had it. I was stir-crazy and depressed. And I'd figured out that they call it serving a mission because it's a lot like serving a prison sentence. I wanted to go home, but I knew if I brought it up with our mission president in Calgary, President Tuttle, he'd just find a way to talk me into staying. So, a few days after Christmas, I snuck off to the bus station in the wee hours of the morning and made my escape. That bus ride, west to Calgary and then south to the border, running for my freedom, running from my duty to God, was one of the most thrilling days of my life. Once my absence became known, the church activated its remarkable emergency communications network, invaluable in times of natural disaster, to put out an APB on a fugitive missionary whose only crimes were wanting to read science fiction novels and make out with his girlfriend. At the border crossing, I managed to avoid the 2 missionaries they sent to intercept me as I transferred from one bus to the next. I felt like a real super spy. I felt like James Bond. But that evening in Great Falls, well, I had a bad feeling as the gray-haired man in the black leather jacket trailed me through the bus station toward the men's room. To show you how useless I am in stressful situations, I went into the men's room anyway. Because while James Bond never seems to need to pee, I really did, and I did not see an alternative. Sure enough, as I was taking care of business at the urinal, this man in his black leather jacket came in, leaned against the wall, and said, "Elder Shunn?" To make a long story short, this man was the local Mormon stake president, roughly comparable to a Catholic bishop. And he was there to convince me, if not to resume my mission service, then at least to go back to Calgary and request an honorable discharge from my mission. Look, it's hard for a Mormon kid to say no to authority figures, which is why I didn't want to talk to my mission president in the first place. Which is all by way of saying that I did go back to Calgary, with delusions of that honorable discharge dancing in my head. To my credit, I managed to hold out against President Tuttle's onslaught of compassionate brainwashing, and that of the people like my parents, whom he put me on the phone with, for all of about 4 or 5 hours. "Oh, Elder Shunn," he exclaimed after I'd caved, "I'm overjoyed at how the Spirit has touched your heart. Oh, and I want you to know that you are in no way on probation or in trouble for going AWOL. No, the one who's in trouble is that lazy companion of yours in Brooks who failed to do everything in his power to keep you from getting on that bus in the first place." Now let's fast forward 2 months. I've been reassigned to Calgary, where I'm doing pretty well, with plenty of other missionaries around to keep the loneliness and depression at bay. I'm actually starting to have a reasonably okay time. It's late February. I'm on temporary assignment with a missionary named Elder Finn. Both our regular companions are district leaders, and they're off somewhere at a mission leadership conference with President Tuttle and 30 or 40 other district and zone leaders. If this sounds like sales terminology, by the way, that's probably not an accident. It's nearly evening, and I'm at Calgary International Airport, where Elder Finn has forced me to accompany him. He's been planning this excursion for weeks, planning for the day when all the mission's most diligent elders are tied up at a conference, and when he's partnered with the infamous Elder Shunn, the one that tried to run away. Elder Finn, who's only been out on his mission for 4 months, is planning to fly home to Sacramento. He's done. But there's one thing Finn hasn't counted on. He thought I was the kind of missionary who'd help him. He thought, based on my past behavior, that I'd stand by and give him time to get away before calling President Tuttle. He miscalculated. I spent the entire drive out to the airport trying to talk Elder Finn into staying on his mission. He wasn't having any of it. So now I've slipped away from him in the crowded terminal, and I'm desperately dialing numbers at a payphone. President Tuttle is not at his office, of course, and none of the missionaries whose numbers I can dredge up from memory are home either. The clock is ticking down to Finn's departure. I have this crazy, half-formed backup plan, but am I willing to do everything in my power to keep my companion from leaving? I rip open the phone book before I can talk myself out of my scheme. I look up Western Airlines and find what I recognize as a local number. I plug my quarter into the slot. My hand shakes as I dial. The line picks up on the first ring. "Western Air Cargo," says a young man. "How can I help you?" I take a deep breath. Slowly, clearly, and distinctly, I say, "There's a bomb in a suitcase on flight 789. And I hang up. I wish I had time to tell you what happened next. How I watched airport security quietly mobilize, how the plane in question was grounded, evacuated, and searched, how the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, yes, the fucking Mounties, caught up with me, how I was convicted of felony public mischief and sentenced to jail, and how to this day I'm forbidden to set foot in Canada. Oh, right. And how Elder Finn was one of the few passengers that night who actually managed to reach his final destination. That's all a story for a different day. What I will tell you is what still unsettles me at night and keeps me awake, which is how easily faith and circumstance can warp a rash impulse into an act of terror. Any of us could be standing on that brink without suspecting it, as I well know. Thank you.